Have you ever said something in anger and regretted it instantly? That split second of emotional reaction can cost you peace, relationships, even your own self-respect. But what if you could pause, just for a breath, and respond instead of react? That pause is not weakness. It's a doorway. A moment of power few ever learn to use. Because true calm isn't something you're born with. It's not a gift, it's a discipline. And it can be trained. Starting today. 1. Respond, don't react. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And that space is your power. There's a difference, an often invisible one, between a man who reacts and a man who responds. The one who reacts is owned by his emotions. The one who responds? He owns himself. Modern society is loud, fast, and aggressively emotional. People speak before they think. Tweet before they reflect. Fight before they breathe. That's not power. That's chaos disguised as masculinity. The truth is, raw reaction is not strength. It's submission to your ego, your pain, your triggers, your fear. Every time you explode in anger, lash out in frustration, or crumble in anxiety, you are giving your power away. Handing it over to whatever, or whoever, provoked you. You were not born to be a slave to your emotions. You were born to master them. And mastery begins in the pause. That split second between what happens and what you do next, that's where the strongest men live. That space is where character is forged. Where greatness begins. Where you stop being a product of the world and start becoming a force within it. Think of every leader you've ever admired. Did they flinch? Did they yell? Or did they stand in stillness, rooted like an oak, unmoved by the storms around them? That stillness isn't passive. It's active. It's trained. It's chosen. So here's the challenge for today, for this moment. When someone cuts you off in traffic, when a colleague disrespects you, when your plans fall apart, when your ego is screaming for revenge, validation, or dominance, don't react. Respond. Pause. Breathe. Pull back the curtain on your automatic impulse and ask, does this emotion serve my mission? Is this action aligned with the man I want to become? Because being a man isn't about how loud you roar, it's about how deeply you can control the fire inside you. You don't have to be cold. You don't have to be emotionless. But you do have to be deliberate. You're not a wild animal. You're not a boy anymore. You're not a puppet on the strings of old wounds and unchecked instincts. You're a builder of discipline. A sculptor of strength. A commander of inner peace. And the next time chaos knocks at your door, let it. But don't open. Stand tall. Breathe slow. And respond with clarity, not instinct. That's your edge. That's your superpower. Action step. The next time your blood starts to boil, don't act. Don't speak. Pause for just 3 seconds. Breathe in. Breathe out. Then ask, what would the strongest version of me do next? Because that version is always watching. And you are training him with every response you choose. 2. Calm is not a gift. It's a discipline. And if you've made it this far, if you've tasted the strength found in a pause, you already know the truth most men avoid their whole lives. Calm is not something you're born with. It's something you earn. Every single day. You see, some people love to say, he's just a naturally chill guy. No. He's not. He's the product of deliberate resistance. He's the result of 1,000 silent battles no one ever saw. He wasn't gifted calm, he built it, brick by brick, breath by breath. Because life doesn't hand you peace. Life throws you noise, pressure, chaos. And in the middle of that, you either crumble or construct. The man who is calm under pressure isn't lucky, he's practiced. That calm you admire in others, that composure you crave, it doesn't show up out of nowhere. It is forged in moments when you want to scream but choose silence. In seconds where you want to punch a wall but instead close your eyes and breathe. In days where everything goes wrong and you still walk steady, because you've learned that outer noise means nothing if your inner world stands firm. You think being calm is easy? Try keeping your cool when someone disrespects you in front of your team. Try staying grounded when a deal falls apart, when your bank account is gasping for air, when people you trust disappoint you. That's when the real test comes. And that's when most men fail. But not you. Because now, you understand, calm isn't about pretending nothing affects you. It's not apathy. It's not softness. It's focus. It's preparation. It's awareness. And yes, it's war. Every single day, the battle for your mind begins the moment you wake up. Will you be pulled by distractions, reactions, and panic, or will you return, again and again, to the steady center you're building? And the world will try to break that center. People will test you. Situations will corner you. Your own thoughts will try to hijack you. That's why calm is a discipline, a skill, a training ground. And like any muscle, it strengthens with use. You don't become composed by reading books or quoting Stoic philosophers. You become composed by living deliberately in a world that wants you reactive. So the question is not, am I calm today? The real question is, what did I do today to train that calm? Did I meditate or scroll mindlessly? Did I slow down and reflect, or let the day drive me into chaos? Did I speak with intention, or just add to the noise? You don't get calm by accident. You get it by waking up each day with the mindset of a warrior monk, strong, focused, intentional, dangerous when needed, but ruled by clarity, not chaos. Because the man who masters calm doesn't become less powerful. He becomes untouchable. Calm is the highest form of readiness. It's the man who walks into a storm and doesn't flinch. Who stares down a problem and doesn't blink. Who doesn't need to prove anything because he's built something far greater than ego, control. So here's your action. Tonight, before you go to sleep, ask yourself, what am I doing to train my calm? Because in a world that glorifies speed, loudness, and noise, calm is the last rebellion. And it belongs to those who earn it. 3. True power is calm under fire. If calm is a skill, if it's something you train, like iron forged under heat, then conflict is the gem where that strength gets tested. You can meditate on mountains. You can read every philosophy known to man. But until you can hold your center in the middle of conflict, your calm isn't real. It's easy to breathe deeply when the world is quiet. It's easy to look composed when no one's pushing your buttons. But what about when someone looks you dead in the eye and tries to rattle you? What about when disrespect walks in wearing a smile? What about when egos clash, voices rise, and all eyes are watching to see what kind of man you'll be? That's the proving ground. That's where the line between fake strength and real power gets drawn. And here's the truth that most never realize. Conflict doesn't create character, it reveals it. The loudest man in the room isn't the strongest. The fastest fist isn't the most dangerous. The one who keeps his cool, he's the one everyone's watching. Because calm in conflict isn't silence, it's presence. It's not about shutting down. It's about standing firm. It's not passive. It's precision. Imagine this, a man steps into a room, eyes steady, posture rooted, voice calm but undeniable. Everyone else is loud, flustered, emotional. He says little, but every word lands. He doesn't rise to their chaos. He pulls the room down to his level. That is control. That is leadership. That is power. And it's rare. We live in a world where people equate anger with strength, aggression with dominance, volume with victory. But the man who doesn't take the bait, who doesn't need to shout, prove, or perform, is playing a higher game. Because when someone tries to provoke you, what they really want is your reaction. And when you give it to them, you hand them your control, your power, your presence. So choose differently. Choose to be the one who disarms tension, not feeds it. Choose to be the calm in the storm, not another drop in the downpour. Not because you're weak, but because you're too strong to be moved by small things. Let them misunderstand you. Let them underestimate you. Let them talk. Let them shout. You stay still. You speak slow. You move with precision. That's how you win battles without even fighting. Because when you don't react the way they expect, when you don't rise to their drama, you confuse them. You break their rhythm. You shatter their illusion of control. That's not avoidance. That's strategy. That's what real warriors have always known. The samurai, the Stoics, the modern-day men who've learned that control is the final frontier of power. And here's your challenge. The next time someone tries to pull you into chaos, don't engage. Don't raise your voice. Don't match their fire. Lower your energy. Lower the tension. Anchor the room. Let them wonder why their tactics aren't working. Let them realize, too late, that they're playing checkers and you're playing chess. Because when you carry calm into conflict, you don't just hold your ground, you own it. And in a world full of noise, the man who speaks softly, only when needed, is the one everyone listens to. 4. Anger isn't power. Control is. So now you understand. Real strength isn't about being the loudest man in the room. It isn't about who throws the first punch. It's about who doesn't need to. And once you see that, once you begin living it, something else becomes clear. Anger isn't power. It's a trap. For years, the world told you otherwise. That if you wanted respect, you had to be intimidating. That if someone crossed you, you had to snap back harder. That fury was the fire that fueled real men. But here's the truth that breaks that myth into dust. Uncontrolled anger doesn't make you powerful. It makes you predictable. Anyone can trigger it. Anyone can use it. And when they do, you lose yourself, your words, your judgment, your image, your ground. Every time you explode, you let someone else dictate your behavior. You hand over your frame, your presence, your code. That is not dominance. That is dependence. You are not dangerous because you can rage. You are dangerous when you don't have to. Because the most dangerous man in the room isn't the one who's red in the face. It's the one who's calm. Calm and fully capable of action if needed. But never moved by impulse. Think about it. When you're angry, do you speak with precision or with poison? Do you aim your words like arrows or throw them like shrapnel? Anger clouds the mind. It hijacks your logic. And in that fog, you don't fight for truth. You fight to win. Even if the war isn't worth it. You say things you regret. You make choices you wouldn't make sober. And when the dust settles, what's left? A brief flash of power? Or a slow burn of shame? Let's make this clear. Choosing not to react in anger isn't weakness. It's the highest form of self-command. Because it takes almost nothing to get mad. But it takes everything you've built, every ounce of strength, discipline, and clarity, to choose restraint. There is nothing more powerful than the man who sees red and still chooses clarity. Who feels the burn of betrayal or insult and still chooses his higher self. That man? He's unshakable. He's not suppressing his power, he's channeling it. He doesn't need to show his teeth to prove he has them. He doesn't let the world provoke his fire. He keeps it contained until it's needed. And when it is, he uses it with precision, not chaos. So here's your challenge. The next time someone tries to light your fuse, pause. Not to ignore. Not to suppress. But to redirect. Ask yourself, does this deserve my peace? Then act like a man who knows that peace is something earned and protected. Because when you train yourself to rise above your anger, rather than from within it, you step into a level of leadership most men never touch. A man who isn't mastered by his anger becomes the kind of man others look to in times of crisis. A rock. A guide. A force. Not because he's soft, but because he's solid. And the next time someone sees you standing firm, composed, unshaken, they won't just see a calm man. They'll see a man who could destroy everything, but chooses not to, because he knows true power doesn't roar, it reigns. 5. Silence is a weapon. If you know how to wield it. After anger fades, and you choose not to react, not to explode, you're left with a void. A moment of space. Most men panic in that silence. They rush to fill it. But the wise man doesn't. He understands that silence isn't absence. It's dominance. When you choose silence, especially when everything inside you wants to shout, it's not retreat. It's strategy. It's the art of doing less to say more. And here's the thing, in a world addicted to reaction, silence is disruptive. It rattles people. It breaks their rhythm. It throws them off balance. When you don't react as expected, you create uncertainty, and that, in itself, is power. Most people don't know how to handle a man who doesn't flinch. Who doesn't argue? Who doesn't dance in the drama? They expect resistance. They feed off energy. When you give them silence instead, they're left standing in their own noise. And that silence? It says more than 1,000 rebuttals ever could. It says, I'm not here to entertain your chaos. I don't need to defend myself, I know who I am. You don't get access to my energy. Let them talk. Let them provoke. You already know your worth, and men who know their worth don't spend it proving themselves to people who can't afford them. That's not weakness. That's lethal control. Because silence can slice cleaner than any comeback. It can expose the insecurity in another's noise. It can shift the power dynamic without a single raised word. And yes, it's uncomfortable. At first, you'll feel the urge to speak, to explain, to be understood. But that urge is rooted in ego. Real power doesn't need validation. It needs clarity. You are not here to convince people who misunderstand you. You are here to build a life that makes misunderstanding irrelevant. That's what silence allows. It removes you from the emotional game board. While others play checkers with their feelings, you're off the board entirely, untouchable. Silence is the pause before the perfect strike. It's the stillness before the storm that you control. It's the space where thoughts sharpen, strategy forms, and fools expose themselves. And remember, silence is not an action. It's deliberate. It's the man in the room who speaks only when necessary, and when he does, everyone listens. Because when words are rare, they carry weight. So what do you do the next time you feel pulled into a petty argument, a toxic debate, a war of egos? You do nothing. You stay still. You listen. And when you speak, if you speak, it's not to react, it's to end the conversation. Speak like a hammer, rarely, but with precision. Let your silence build anticipation. Let others feel the weight of what you choose not to say. Because in a world that can't stop talking, the man who chooses silence with intention doesn't just stand apart, he stands above. 6. The present moment is your power base. Silence gives you space. And in that space, something rare begins to emerge, awareness. Not noise. Not confusion. But pure, focused presence. And if silence is the sword, then presence is the shield. It protects you from two of the most corrosive forces that haunt the modern man, regret of the past and fear of the future. You felt them. The weight of what you should have done. The anxiety of what might happen. They lurk in your mind like shadows, whispering, pulling, draining. But here's the truth. Neither the past nor the future can hurt you unless you let them live in your head. What's gone is gone. It cannot be edited. What's ahead hasn't arrived. It cannot be controlled. And the man who lives in either is never truly here. You can't change the mistake. You can't predict the outcome. But you can choose what you do now. That choice is your weapon. Your freedom. Your identity. Presence isn't a soft, spiritual luxury. It's the ultimate form of personal power. It's where your breath lives. Your strength. Your awareness. It's where decisions are made. Where clarity is born. Where peace is found. Every second you're not here, really here, you're giving away your life in tiny pieces. And in the silence you've chosen to practice, you begin to hear it. The sound of the moment. The pulse of now. The only place your power truly exists. Not in the memory of who you were. Not in the fantasy of who you'll become. But in the man you are in this second, what you say, what you think, what you choose. The strongest men in history were not just warriors. They were deeply present. They were men who could see clearly while others panicked. Men who could hear truth through the noise. Men who could hold still, see the full picture, and act with unwavering intent. They weren't distracted. They weren't split. They were here. Because presence is precision. And without it, you're shooting blind, speaking unconsciously, living on autopilot. So what does this mean for you? It means every moment, no matter how ordinary, is an opportunity to practice mastery. Standing in line. Driving. Talking to your partner. Listening to your breath. All of it is a dojo. A training ground. Not for your body. For your mind. The next time fear creeps in, slow down. Feel your feet. Feel your breath. Name 5 things around you. Because your life is not happening in your head. It's happening here. And it's passing whether you notice it or not. And here's the paradox. When you are fully present, you stop chasing peace. Because you realize it was never in the next success, the next goal, or the next version of you. It was always right here, waiting for you to return. So return. And every time your thoughts drift to a past you can't change or a future you can't control, bring them back. Breathe. Stand tall. Focus your eyes. Engage. This is where the man you want to be is built. In the moment most people miss. 7. Your mood is your domain. Guard it relentlessly. Once you understand that your real power lives in the present, there's a deeper truth waiting for you right beneath the surface. No one should have the power to decide your state of mind. And yet, how many times have you given that power away? How often have you let a stranger ruin your morning with a single comment? How often have you allowed someone's bitterness, sarcasm, or bad day to hijack your peace? How often have you walked into a room full of tension and absorbed it like it was yours? That ends now. Because your emotional state, the terrain of your mind, the climate of your heart, is yours and yours alone. It is sovereign ground. And the moment you allow someone else to govern it, you abandon your throne. Make no mistake, emotions will come. You're not a robot. You will feel. But feeling and obeying are 2 different things. You can feel anger without becoming it. You can feel anxiety without drowning in it. You can feel the sting of someone's words without letting them shape your internal weather. And the man who learns to hold space between stimulus and state, between what happens and how he feels, is no longer at the mercy of life. He's standing above it, watching it move, choosing his steps like a general on high ground. Because here's the truth most men never hear. Your mood is a choice. Maybe not the first wave that hits you. But the second? The third? The story you tell yourself after it? That's you. That's learned. That's trained. You don't control what they do. But you always control what it means to you. You get to decide whether their insult defines you. You get to decide whether a delay ruins your day. You get to decide whether someone else's chaos becomes your emotional soundtrack. That's radical ownership. And it's uncomfortable. Because it means no more blaming. No more "he made me feel." Only, I chose how to carry it. But with that ownership comes the freedom most men spend their entire lives chasing. You become unmoved by petty minds. Untouched by emotional manipulation. Unshaken by opinions that don't matter. Because you've built something bigger than validation, you've built emotional sovereignty. And that is rare. The man who guards his mood like sacred ground becomes the kind of man others look to in times of crisis. He's not shaken by tone. He's not thrown by energy. He's not reactive to tension. He sets the tone. He carries the energy. He creates the climate. So what do you do next? Start paying attention, not just to what triggers you, but to how quickly you hand over the keys. Track it. Watch it. Own it. And then, each time, take one step closer to full command. Not cold. Not disconnected. But aware. Unapologetically centered. Because the day you stop letting other people write the script of your emotional life is the day you finally become the author. And no one gets to touch the pen unless you hand it to them. 8. Inner stillness is outer strength. Once you've taken back the keys to your emotional state, once you stop letting other people dictate how you feel, something profound begins to happen. You stop reacting. And you start radiating. Not in a performative way. Not by flexing or posturing. But by simply being grounded, so deeply, so fully, that nothing outside of you can knock you off center. This kind of calm doesn't need to prove itself. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It doesn't wear a mask of confidence. It is confidence, rooted, quiet, real. Because the man who is solid inside doesn't chase control over the world. He has control over himself. And that makes the world respond to him. You've seen this man before. He walks into a room and doesn't rush to fill the space. He doesn't need to speak first, or at all. His presence is an anchor. His silence speaks. And everyone around him, without even knowing why, adjusts. That kind of power doesn't come from money. Or muscle. Or domination. It comes from alignment, when what you believe, feel, and do are all moving in the same direction. It comes from being able to stay still when everything around you is spinning. To stay measured when others are losing their heads. To act when needed, but never out of panic, never out of ego. Because the real test of strength is not whether you can move others. It's whether they can move you. And when you train stillness, when you practice quiet strength, you become immovable. Not stuck. Not stubborn. Just deeply centered. And this centeredness doesn't isolate you. It attracts. It draws respect, not from fear, but from admiration. It makes people feel safe in your presence because they can sense you're not looking for approval, not playing games, not ruled by impulse. This is how you become a leader. Not just of teams, of rooms, of business, but of your own life. Because when a man has nothing to prove and everything to offer, he becomes magnetic. And make no mistake, this calm, this stillness, it isn't gifted. It's built. It's built in the early mornings when you choose discipline over comfort. It's built in the quiet evenings when you reflect instead of numb out. It's built in those tiny moments when you could be dragged into noise, but choose to rise above it. The world is noisy. It's fast. It's loud. It will pull at you, scrolling, shouting, selling, distracting. But the man who can stay calm in the noise becomes the one others follow when the volume gets too high. So here's your reminder. You don't need to control the storm. You just need to not let it inside you. Because real strength doesn't come from pushing. It comes from holding. And the man who can hold peace, presence, and power inside himself, while the world outside spins, is no longer controlled by circumstance. He is the circumstance. He is the standard. He is the force that makes others pause and reconsider. Train your stillness. That is where your greatest power waits. 9. A cold mind in a hot moment is true intelligence. When calm becomes your baseline, when silence and stillness are no longer signs of retreat but tools of power, something deeper begins to sharpen. Your thinking. Not just your intelligence. Not the accumulation of facts. But your clarity. Your discernment. Your ability to stay sharp in the middle of the heat. Because strength without strategy is just noise. Power without perspective is dangerous. And reaction without reflection is the quickest path to regret. This is where many men fall short. They build the muscle. They talk about control. But the moment tension rises, their thinking collapses. Why? Because they've trained their bodies but not their minds. They've prepared for battle but not for decision-making under fire. But you're different. You're building something most men never touch, a calm mind in a chaotic moment. It's easy to sound wise in a quiet room. But what about when the pressure spikes? What about when you're blindsided in a meeting? When a relationship fractures unexpectedly? When a plan fails and all eyes turn to you? Do you collapse into blame, emotion, noise? Or do you pause to breathe and assess? The man who can slow time in his head while the world speeds up around him. That man holds a different kind of intelligence. He doesn't just survive the moment. He shapes it. This isn't about being passive. It's about being precise. And precision requires distance from the heat, from the noise, from the inner voice that says, do something now. You don't win in the heat by becoming the heat. You win by staying cool. That coolness is not detachment. It's discipline. It's a practiced awareness that says, I see what's happening. I feel the emotion. But I will choose my move, not let the moment choose it for me. That's real intelligence. It's not emotional suppression. It's emotional transmutation. You take the adrenaline, the frustration, the panic, and you channel it into observation, strategy, execution. You become the man who speaks last, but says what actually matters. The one who doesn't act immediately, but acts effectively. And when everyone else is scattered, you're focused. While others get loud, you get clear. While others push, you pivot. Because the strongest mind in the room isn't the one that knows the most. It's the one that thinks cleanest under pressure. And this, like everything else, is a skill. One you train in the small fires, disagreements, obstacles, setbacks. So that when the inferno comes, you're already composed. So here's your next step. Practice staying sharp when your emotions rise. Notice the tension, but don't act on it yet. Buy yourself space. Even a breath. A glance. A single moment to regroup. That moment may not seem like much. But it's the difference between reaction and wisdom. Between damage and direction. Between being pulled by the fire and using it to forge something stronger. Because when the heat is on and the pressure peaks, the coldest mind becomes the sharpest blade. And the man who carries that blade, he doesn't just win the moment. He rewrites it. 10. You are not your circumstances. When your mind is calm in the fire, when your decisions are guided by clarity, not chaos, one final truth becomes undeniable. You are not your surroundings. You are not your setbacks. You are not your story unless you choose to be. Most people don't live that way. They let the world write their script. They believe they are the product of what happened to them. They think their worth is tied to their title, their income, their status, their pain. But here's the liberating, sometimes terrifying truth. You are only defined by what you accept as your identity. Not by your childhood. Not by your bank account. Not by the mistake you made 5 years ago. Not by the person who left, the opportunity you lost, or the fears that tried to stop you. All of that? It's context. But you are the author. You get to decide how the story is told. And more importantly, how it continues. Because men who live under the weight of their circumstances stay small. They shrink to fit the narrative. They blame. They freeze. They resent. They say things like, "It's just how life is," or "I didn't have a choice." But those are not the words of a man walking the stoic path. Those are not the words of a builder, a warrior, a sovereign mind. No, the man who owns himself takes responsibility for meaning. He sees the broken ground and plants a seed anyway. He sees the storm and steadies his breath. He sees the unfairness and decides to rise. Because he knows life isn't supposed to be fair. It's supposed to be his. Shaped, forged, crafted. Not by comfort, but by consciousness. So let this be your turning point. Whatever you've been through, let it be fuel, not fate. Whatever label the world tried to pin on you, tear it off. Whatever story your past keeps whispering, rewrite it. You are not what happened. You are what you do with what happened. You're not here to inherit a life. You're here to construct one, with hands steady, with values intact, with the kind of mind that doesn't flinch when life tests it. You're not the environment. You're the force that bends it. You're not the noise. You're the frequency that cuts through it. And when others collapse under the weight of their circumstances, you stand, not because it's easy, not because you're unaffected, but because you've chosen to believe in the power of who you are becoming. So ask yourself today, am I carrying a story that no longer serves me? Am I confusing context with identity? Am I letting something external decide what's possible? Then remind yourself, firmly, clearly, daily. I am not my circumstances. I am the one who moves through them. That is Stoicism. That is power. That is the mark of a man who has taken back authorship of his life. Calm isn't weakness. It's unshakable power. It's not passive. It's practiced. Not soft. But surgical. Not given. Earned. Every day you choose to respond instead of react. Every time you anchor yourself in the storm, you're training something most men will never even touch. Mastery of self. The world wants you reactive. Loud. Scattered. But you were not built for chaos. You were built for command. You were built to carry clarity in noise, stillness in pressure, honor in conflict. So today, don't let emotion lead. Let wisdom guide. Let calm carry you. Let the man you're becoming choose the path ahead. Because in a world full of storms, the calm man isn't surviving. He's leading.